Here we are, episode 58 of the Trash Talk Business Podcast, where we talk about how to grow, scale, get into the junk removal world, and build the dream you want by hauling the stuff that other people don't. It's really that simple here on the Trash Talk Business Podcast. Whether you're in junk removal, waste removal, sludge removal, demolition, deconstruction, hell, if you're picking up trash bags on the side of the road, you came to the right place. As always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host from the great state of Texas, Casey Bubba Lawrence. Casey, what are we talking about today?
Man, today we have a guest. His name's Patrick, and I'm guessing he has something to do with junk removal and waste because he's on our show.
I have nothing to do with junk removal and waste. That's what I love
so Patrick,
about this.
Yeah. So tell us about yourself and what you do and why you do it. Forgive me if I don't know who you are. That's just sometimes how it goes.
We learn as we go.
Yeah, well, I can tell you why I think I'm here. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
So I'm ex-military. I was back in the 80s. I was in the military, and Andy and I were in a group meeting last week, and we absolutely connected. And my whole thing is this: I don't care what you do for a living. You're always in the people business. And what I love about what your industry is about is you're doing things that people either can't or they won't. They can't because they don't have the skills. They won't because they're lazy, they're old, whatever the issue is. But, their shit is your bread and butter, and I love it. So I'm a business consultant or a coach. So I just help people take their skills at what they do and try to amplify those a little bit. And what I specialize in is differentiation, especially if you're in a competitive market. So I'm here to help just lend some ideas on how do you differentiate yourself in a competitive marketplace? Because if you don't, then your customers will tell you your value, and your value is going to be less than what your competition is charging, or you're going to be out of business because you didn't know your own value proposition.
No, this is why I brought them on. Sales and marketing are always solid topics here on the podcast, and this is what's happening. So this is the first week of May, first full week of May here, May 8th. We're recording this episode. Was at Waste Expo with Casey this last week here in New Orleans. I'm still in New Orleans at the airport, and every day I go on Facebook, I see more and more groups, junk removal groups, and I saw last night there was a post that like 70, 80 hits on it. And what's happening is this junk removal space has gotten oversaturated, and so now guys are racing to the bottom of the barrel to sell underneath the competition. And I've been doing this 14 years in some capacity. I've been doing it 7 full time, and I'm feeling the burn. I feel the struggle, and I lean in on what I know my competitive advantage is, what my differentiators are. What do I have that my competition doesn't have, right? And so bringing you in, obviously, because you're that case in our both Army vets ourselves, so that's always good, right? We'll give you the bottom line up front, tell how it is. And what interested me here is because you're not operating in this space. A lot of people get stuck in their head about how this world works. Really want to talk about, sales and competitive advantage in a space that's junk removal, because some people think it's a commodity, and certainly the transactional part is a commodity. At the end of the day, we're in the people business, like you said. People aren't going to remember what you did or what you said. They're going to remember how they felt when you left the interaction. And unlike working retail, right, where you sell somebody that's super transactional, you're just standing there at the cashier. Or even like other home services, like when someone puts a new garbage disposal in your house, it is not life-changing. I can tell you, doing junk removal, and our listeners can attest to this, sometimes doing junk removal for somebody is life-changing. And I'd say it's life-altering for most because, there's times in their life they need our services. They're moving, they're buying a house, they're selling a house. There's been a death or a divorce. These critical times where they need our services. And so how do you differentiate so you're not another chuck in the truck that is going to race to the bottom to take stuff from the side of the road? And that's the world we live in.
Yeah, and if you don't, your business is highly competitive. It's no different than being a realtor or, a financial investor or whatever it is. If you're going to buy or sell a house, you're going to find a realtor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't differentiate yourself, and differentiation is something that you do, not that you say, then you're comparing yourself to a garbage can. Okay. And I know that's not what you are. And you can't be in business for 14 years if, you can compare me to a garbage can. If someone does that, then that's wrong. And people get hung up and think, well, you just have to undercut and have a better price. But I'll tell you this, free is just another price tag. And, I've gotten a free bunch of shit before, and it's just a bunch of shit, right? And I'll pay top dollar for the best thing in the world because it does something for me. So if what you do, the cost of that does not outweigh the benefit of what it does for that person, then you've done nothing to make yourself a differentiator in the marketplace, because not everyone's your customer. And so what you're doing is service based. And when people get hung up on the price of the product versus the cost of the solution, then you don't even want those people, to talk to. I mean, because they aren't your ideal client. And I wrote a book called Sell the Difference. It's a playbook on differentiation, and it takes you as the person who has something to offer into the mind of the person who's trying to find that offer, and they're desperately trying to find it. And what happens is everybody sounds the same. And when we're in a world of people who sound the same, the customers don't try to sort it out. They just hit mute, and everybody's on mute. So what I help you do is just create a category of one. You're the only choice that they can make. And then they move from, why should we do business with you, Andy, to, why haven't we been doing business with Andy all along? That's the transformational environment you want to be in. And if you're not, you're in a transactional environment. Transactional, you'll live and die by pennies on the pound. It's just not worth it.
So how do you do that? How do you go from transcension or transcending, right?
Yeah. So when you move from transactional to transformational, the first thing, it really is a strategy. And so, it's not people get confused with tactics versus strategy, right? Strategy, here's what I'm going to be, here's where I'm going to go. Tactics, here's how I'm going to get there. So I'm sure you didn't open up your business and say, I'm going to be the cheapest guy around to offer ways to get rid of your waste. You probably had a vision of what this business would become. It had nothing to do with what you were delivering, but it had to do with how you deliver it as a person. So you have to have, you've got to have some strategies. And so the thing to do is to first make sure that you're not being tactical when you should be strategic. So think of when you're in the military, right? Take the hill, take the higher ground. That's the strategy. Now, advance 6 inches and duck and cover. That's a tactic, right? But if you say we're taking fire, get up and run to the hill, well, that's the wrong tactic to take. That's going to get you in some trouble. So you have to have a strategy in place. You have to have a definition of what it is you currently are and what it is you'd like to be to your client base. And you have to make sure that you're solving a problem in their life. And then you have to, I have some graphs. I'll show you a picture of it. It's called the sales differentiation curve. Okay. And there's a look at it from the sales perspective and then from the buyer perspective. And you can see a real big box called mute. And that's what the customers have grown accustomed to, is that most people fall into that box of mute. So I put together a playbook that looks really, like it's a graph and math and things like that. It's not, it's pictures. I'm a picture guy, and I can plot on there. Here's where I think I'm at. Here's the customer. Here's me. So what am I not doing that I think I want to do? So you have to have a game plan and a playbook and a strategy to get to what's different.
So most of our listeners listen when they're listening in the truck. They're listening when they're on jobs. So you showed us a picture of the XY axis.
Yeah.
So it looked like the first 8 points going north and first 8 points going east. Right when you're at 8, you're in that box of mutes, right? So what are the XY axis? What are the two words?
So it's not a good visual if you're driving the truck. So the whole point.
That's what I want to talk about. If we can talk it out, what are the two points you're plotting there?
Yeah, it would be differentiation and perceived value. Okay. So if someone has a low perceived value, you're buying from me. You just perceive me as nothing more than a garbage can, and I do nothing to differentiate. Then I end up in a box where I sound like everybody else. I'm mute, right? If you have a low perceived value and I'm starting to differentiate, I have a different crew. I offer other services. I have better, billing practices, that type of thing. I do things to differentiate compared to the others. I move up into a box called maybe. I might get it, because they have a low perceived value. It's hard to move them. What you're trying to do is move to the upper right quadrant. And that's an area where you have the business, you'll get the business, you'll get the referrals, but even that subdivides into some areas where you could mudslide. So it is a visual that you need to you need to walk through. But what it does is it gives you a picture of if you have 9 opportunities and all 9 go the wrong way, the opposite of what you planned, you can visually take a look at it and say, here's the outcome, here's what I think I'm doing. And then the outcome is not what I want. I have to change something. I have to either look at my strategy, look at my tactics. Definitely not, it's not price 9 times out of 10. It's not your price, but it's something that you're doing that's
I think
not differentiating.
I think a lot of it's presentation in the beginning, especially. I know, like you said, this is a very competitive market for junk removal. Let's just use junk removal for example. Everybody and their dad now has a junk removal company because the truck and trailers, it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when you're in these saturated markets, you have to find your edge, right? That's what I like to call it, your edge. What makes you stand out? Whether it's you're veteran owned or maybe you're affiliated with a local nonprofit or something, but you have to have an edge on your competitors. And I noticed that one thing I had on all of my competitors, I was involved with my communities. They weren't. As in, I could probably throw a rock in any direction and hit someone I knew because I've met them and I've talked to them and we go to the same meetings here and this, that, and the other. And a lot of us are, especially now, they're in desperate mode. So they go to Google Ads or they go to an SEO and say, hey, here's all my money. Make me, busy. But the problem is you're going away from your market. You're literally going into other people's market out of desperation and you're forgetting your own backyard. And I'm seeing Andy and I had a conversation about this. I mean, unfortunately, junk removal is trending right now. And I say unfortunately because it's not really a market that can sustain the amount of growth it's having and also success. Right. You're going to get a lot of people washed out because they don't know how to keep up and sustain the growing and failing economy. Like the economy is growing in the wrong direction.
Yeah. And the thing is, you mentioned something really important about being in local markets. And, if you think about it, so differentiation is not like something you say to people. Because if you made a script of everything that you say, like if someone said, why would I do business with you, Casey, the first time they're meeting you? Whatever comes out of your mouth might sound exactly like the next person that comes through that they ask that question to, right? And that's a really good exercise to go through. What do I say when I'm asked that question? Or people don't know how to network the right way. They try to talk about what they do as opposed to what they do for someone or who they work with. So, if you
don't even mention your job.
No, when I go to when I go to networking events, I usually spend a couple hours preparing how am I going to answer that question, so I don't start listing everything that we do or what I do. And if they say, "Well, what makes you special?" I mean, that's a stupid question, right? What makes me special? I mean, my mom will tell you what makes me special. My wife will tell you. Yeah, but here's what my customers like about what I do for them, right?
Yeah.
So people go, oh yeah, differentiation is your value statement. No, if it's a statement, then you're going to sound like everybody else. I've been in business 15 years. I use recycled products. I'm just in time. I'm blah blah blah. I just had a guy on my podcast who came up with a solution just for small business. And it's automation, right? And it's like, well, how do you automate? And what they found, especially in markets like yours, people want to communicate better, but they don't want to talk to people more. So think about that concept of differentiation. So what he came up with one night, he works all day, comes home, he's walking around his pool at nighttime. He notices a light is out inside his pool underneath the water. The only time he's going to notice that is at nighttime if he's walking around. He'd never notice that during the day. So he's like, I have to get that repaired. He can't change the bulb himself, obviously. So what does he do? He calls the pool service company after hours, gets through voicemail jail, leaves a message, doesn't know if they've heard from him or not. A couple days later, he's walking around at night. He sees the lights on. He's like, oh, maybe they fixed it. Maybe it fixed itself. I don't know. Then he gets a bill. Then he has to call and say, did you guys do something? And so he said, you know what? How about, most 90% of people have a smartphone. Like, what if you had an app that, like, I could record this, I could send it to you. It automatically goes to your dashboard, the repair person, and And then it sends me a response. This is in the queue. You'll hear from us in 24 hours. And then you can invoice, you can quote, you can send something back, but you could videotape, like my pool is making a grr noise. Well, what does that mean? Right? You show the valve. Then you say, oh, yeah, I've seen that. And suddenly the communication process within the process of I have a problem and then you fixed it, the customer knows it's happened. And he said, I want them to be doing business when I'm doing business and where I'm doing business. And no other pool company's doing that. No other pool repair companies. I'm like, that's differentiation. They figured out something that had to do with automation and made themselves unique. And then what's cool is it's one of those things in a local market where I can go on and go, hey, my pool's all broken up too. So I could see who's using who, and I can use this app, and you can do all sorts of real cool things on the back end, like refer people, give a rating that's internal. They can do their billing, and it's all when you want it, and you know something was done. So that's unique. Now, most of us go, let me Google, let me call, let me leave a message, let me follow up, and we think we have to do that. And they said, let's take the opposite approach. What would be best for the customer? And that's what you guys do on a regular basis, I'm sure, is what's best for them, because it is competitive. We aren't a garbage can. There is more to it. And if you lower your price, pretty soon you're doing it for free, and then you're not in business.
So it's interesting. So we had one of our last guests, this Travis Johnson. He said something that I've 100% plagiarized now, still, and I know I probably owe him a nickel every time I say it now. And as a owner operator, you have to delegate, automate, or eliminate. Right? Those are the three things you do when there's something that is not a good use of your time. And there's 100 ways to determine if it's a good use of your time. And so what you're talking about right there, that automation, is something that we promote here on the podcast, and that is something that differentiates us. So the tool that we use in our business is Java, and I'm a no shit spokesperson. Actually, the reason I'm going to Nashville this week is to go shoot content with Java because I love it. I've been using it for 6 years, and I don't advocate for shit unless I know it's tried and tested and true. And what you're talking about is exactly what we've built in our business. So we know that the big franchises have that level of automation, and Chuck in the Truck doesn't typically have that automation. And so when you have, for us, we use the tool Java. People can send us pictures, they can send us videos, and we take before and afters, and we send it to them. I had this one woman I've been working with for like 5 years now, never met her. She only text message, never even sends emails. She'll only send me text messages, and she'll put a check in the mail. Well, a week later, I know I'm getting paid. Like I've had her credit card on file for 5 years. I've never used it because within 30 days, she always cuts us a check. And I've never had to even talk. I don't know what she looks like. I've never met her in person. But what it is she's a realtor that represents investors. And so she'll go in a house, she'll take some pictures, like, hey, here's what it is. Can we price over text? Or shoot in a lockbox, go there, look at it. I send her a text message with the quote. She'll say, yep, approved. I do the job. The one time she's like, hey, is that like a flat rate? Are you sure about that price? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. She goes, cool, there'll be a check in the mailbox. So I showed them the check was already there before I even did the job, and I sent pictures to them. Hey, we're good here. So that level of automation is absolutely simple and critical. And what it ends up doing is it forces you then to think, okay, what else can I automate? Because you're a sales guy, right? So it's like when it comes to sales, it's like you don't have to be everywhere all the time, right? Obviously, that's the ideal thing, right? Is to be everywhere all the time. It's how do you automate parts of your marketing process so that you keep the churn going, and then when you do show up, to your point, you're there in the present. Because I remember for the first year or two of our business, I would go to networking events, and I was on my phone half the time, more better. So it's like, what do you, even you and I, when we met at that call last week, it was like a 90-minute call. Hell, it went beyond 90 minutes. And it's like the whole time I was present and I was there. What processes do you recommend for people you consult with from a sales perspective to show up and be present? What are the best practices when it comes to networking?
Yeah, well, okay, so a couple things. I want to go back to what you said: delegate and automate, and I forget what the third one was. But with delegate,
eliminate.
Yeah,
there are some things that just need not to be done.
Yeah, and that's part of delegate, right? So I always caution folks, and I give a leadership seminar on the idea of delegation. And I'm like, don't look at delegation like you're just getting a pile of shit off your desk and putting a pile of shit on someone else's desk. That's not delegate. You need to eliminate. Some things are just busy work. Don't create process just to create process. So I'm a big advocate of the first thing you need to do as you are a business owner and running your business is you need to scale on a scale of 1 to 10. What are your strengths, right? So people say, oh, vision's a great strength, right? Well, okay, vision's good, communication's good. And under communication would be like, ideation. I can come up with the ideation. I may be a good talker, but I may be a horrible listener, or I listen, but I'm really busy trying to say the next thing, right? So you have to know, as someone who runs a business, what are your top 3, maybe 4 strengths that you are a 10 or a 7 to 10 in that area? That's where you spend your time. And then when you talk about delegating, you're not getting rid of garbage. You're saying, hey, Andy, you're phenomenal at taking data and analyzing it and telling me the story that data tells. So, and I'm not good at that. I can tell the story, but I can't call the data to have the data tell me. I can't create the story. I give that to you. And when you work with those things, those strengths, what you're really doing is you're creating a higher level of happiness. Happy leaders are great leaders. So the happier you are during the day, meaning you work with your strengths, the better your business. And so I go to you as my offshoot and I say, that's your 10. That's my 3. You do your part as well as you can. And I just delegated something that you went, that's great, man. You didn't just pile busy work. You gave that to me. Now, in terms of sales, I think you're asking what are the steps to automate. And every business is going to be unique, and every person is going to be unique. So in the case of like what you do in your business world, things that you can automate have to do with like having this. A lot of your audience, a lot of the guys are on the job, right? They're knuckle busters. They're not sitting behind a desk waiting for an email to come in so they can answer it with a bunch of stuff. They're not copying and pasting anything. They're on the job. To stop and respond to a request is a nuisance, right? And that could be someone saying, I'm around the corner. Can you come look at what I have? I want to get a bid. I want to get an estimate, whatever. I want to know how much it would cost. And you're too busy to even look at your email because you're on the job, or you're arranging logistics. So I always say, let's take a look at your pain points in your business, and let's see if there is an automation that exists. Let's see if that fits and works. If there isn't, is there somebody who is doing what you would desire to have happen in an automated way, and can they sustain it? And if so, can we go learn from them? You don't have you're not going to have to create something brand new with technology. It's probably already out there. So I say we take a look at your entire process. We kind of draw a picture. I'm a very visual person, and I start seeing what can I eliminate, but I don't eliminate I don't replace as much as I embrace whatever the outcome would be. So I want happier customers. They don't hear from me, but when they do, they love me. Well, that means that there's a gap between they love me and they hear from me, because maybe I'm the type of guy, I want to be on the job. I want to be doing it. I like to work with the trucking companies and arrange the logistics and everything else, but I don't like to handle customer complaints, which are really sales opportunities or whatever it may be. So there's not a standard answer to your question of what do we automate, because you could automate everything and have unhappy customers, and ultimately your customer experience, your employee experience are first and foremost.
So what's
Well, I feel like,
go ahead, Case.
well, I was going to say, I feel like a lot of these owner operators also are fearful of hiring people that are smarter than them in certain areas. There's a lot of pride, but also at the same time, a lot of stubbornness, because it goes into, well, if they figure out how to do something better than me, I'll cease to exist. Instead of thinking, if they do something better than me, I won't have to do it. And that's the thing is, I remember every single person I hired, even if it was for a helper position, I always told them the same thing. I was like, my goal is to eventually have you, if you want it, to take this business from me. Yeah. So I can go do things, and this business will be ran by the people here. And everybody, they laughed, brushed it off. They always thought I was kidding. And I told them, I go, I'm giving you every opportunity, not just to learn, but I'm teaching you. Yeah. And I would show them, hey, this is how you do this. This is how you, not just take leadership advice, but this is how you, market whatever. And I think a lot of it is when you're trying to automate things and delegate, it's not always about technology. Like you said, a lot of it is, hey, I'm going to have this person who's in charge do these things. This person over here is not in charge, but I'm going to sprinkle some responsibility on him as well, because I notice he's really good at a couple other things that, even though my operations manager has authority, maybe it isn't his biggest strengths.
Well, and there could be companies that are one man show, right? And so,
Yeah.
and let's say you don't have people you manage, but the process could be automated, and then so in other words, you could put things back into the customer's hands,
Hmm.
where whatever hour a day it is, they could put in their square footage, their poundage, whatever. They could get rough estimates, and they could put. And you can get a dashboard that it puts it on your dashboard, and then it puts it on your calendar. And so there's parts of that process that can be automated, but the
Well, it's
you
also questions. You have to qualify your
yeah,
customer. A
yeah,
lot
oh
of
yeah,
us don't know how to qualify our own customer. We just think, oh, everybody's our customer.
right,
But that's the thing is qualifying them, make sure that they're the right customer for
right.
you, and that this time you're about to spend estimating, explaining what your business does and your history and all that shit. Well, now it's worth it because they're an actual customer.
Well, and customers appreciate that, and that's part of the differentiation process. So people, when they want to hire me, they're like, "All right, here I am, fix my sales," and I'm like, "Dude, that's just not the way it works. Okay, I don't have this magic wand. I'm not Harry Potter. Okay, so a couple things have to happen. You have to understand your own pain. If you don't know the pain you're in, you don't know that you're in pain, or you're willing to put up with the pain. I can't help you. So when you hire me, and I go through the process of taking a look at things, I look at you as the leader, or if you have a leadership team. If the team doesn't support what the leader wants to do, you're going to get screwed. They're going to backstab you, right? So there has to be a readiness, a willingness, and an ability. Ready, willing, and able, and that includes automation. If you have a company like you're talking about where the person is threatened by someone being smarter or threatened by technology, chances are I'm not going to be able to help you with an idea that has to do with automation. So I'm gonna work with you on what problem do you think I could help you fix. Now, if they say I want to grow my sales, right? I'm $1 million organization. I want to grow my sales. So then we just have to evaluate: are you trying to grow the bottom line, or do you really want to grow sales? Do you want to be $2 million with a 10% margin on the bottom? Do you want to be a $1 million company with a 50% margin? What do you want? So don't tell me you want to grow your sales. Like, don't tell me the outcome. Tell me, this causes me some pain. What do you see? Because you're not from my industry, and I'll come up with a lot of ideas that I see, and then we value them together.
Yeah, what you're talking about there, which I really like, is you're talking about profit first mentality. We had Mike on a couple months back, and the first thing he says is, okay, well, how much money do you want to make this year? And then you go from there, right? And then he utilizes an 18-month strategy in profit first, where you say, okay, this is where I want to get to. This is where I'm at. And again, like you said to me earlier, you didn't say it well, you said it out loud, which is interesting. I don't know if you knew this about me, but I call the triple D effect, right? Data-driven decisions. I make decisions based off the data. A lot of people in this world will make decisions and then find data that supports their decision because they want confirmation bias. Right? And like, oh, see, I told you. It's like, no. See what the data tells you first, and then
Yeah.
make your decision.
Mhm.
And the data doesn't always give you the answer. It gives you more information that's objective information, right? And so it's interesting you brought that up because that's exactly where I'm at. And what you touched on, which I'll give you this, something I do and something I teach, is the 6 buckets of business. And you hit all 6 buckets. So this is what I tell owner operators: here are your 6 buckets, and they're very linear from the start of your business process to the end. So it is marketing, sales, operations, the thing you do, resources that are human, and the numbers.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, I rank myself 1 through 6, and I challenge others to rank themselves. And then we use an XY axis of is it a skill gap or a will gap.
Uh-huh.
If we start at the beginning, though, we rank 1 through 6. What I find is, you also brought this up when you were talking about, like, you'll find salespeople like to deal with problems, not always people, right?
Uh-huh.
Because this is the challenge. There's a huge difference between someone who's a salesperson and also someone that can lead people. So, for example, sales is a natural strength of mine. I can go, I can talk, I can write. And then when it comes to resources that are human, I'm intentional. I don't call it human resources because that has a connotation already. I'm not the best leader in our company. I'm not the best one to deal. I was going to use the word deal with, but work with our vendors, because I'm kind of a dick. I don't ask a lot of questions. I get to it, right? From a sales perspective, I can put it on. I'm sweeter than pie. When it comes to people I pay, I'm very demanding. So I found someone in the president of our company. Resources that are human is his top, 1 or 2 on his strengths.
Mhm.
Now, operations is low for him, so it's like, well, numbers is good for me, operations is good, in sales. So those are my 3 high. Those are my high 3,
Uh-huh.
right? And then that means my low 3 are doing junk removal, even since we started our business, my brother was running the jump. Marketing is the worst thing, the thing I'm worst at, and then resources that are human. Those are my bottom three. Even when you break things up, high three, low three, it starts to paint the picture. And then what ends up happening, like with Ken and I, our company president, him and I are both high three on sales. We're good. We got it. We are both low three on marketing. So it's like, okay, now we have to delegate. Hire Mr. Outside Agency to handle this because it's not a strength of ours. He doesn't have to be strong in operations or the numbers because I got that. Just like I don't need to be strong in resources that are human. He has that covered. So what you're saying is on point in those strengths. And then the question becomes, at what point as an owner operator, or what do you do, I should say, when sales isn't your strength?
Well, and I think people first of all, everybody's responsibility, it's twofold. First, and so I'm a big fan, like with job descriptions, they're complicated, they're obtuse, they don't make sense. I've got eliminated from jobs because when people write a job description, they write the most ideal person they could ever find that doesn't exist. And I've had people basically say, I'm looking for Patrick Kagan, and I want 30 plus years, I want ex-military, I want someone who's been a CEO at the Fortune 500, CEO at mid-range and ran his own company, and he has to have a master's. Well, I don't have a master's. I get screened out. And I'm like, so you're writing everything that's optimal. You don't even know what you're looking for. So
I want to say something here in a minute after you're done. I just want to put that in there.
So what you're getting at is have a profile. What does it look like? Right? So it's like you were in the military. What does our destination look like when we get there? Because I'm looking at it on a tabletop. I'm looking at it on a map. What does it look like when I get there? So I know I'm there. So you have to do the same thing with personnel. So saying, what do we do when we're not good at sales? It's the same thing as saying, what happens when we're both really strong at sales? You have a similar challenge. So you and your president of your company, you're both top at sales. You're the rainmakers. Well, that can be limiting if you can't make others rainmakers. It can be limiting to try to train someone to take over and have career ascension for yourself, because you'll just step in and do it. And they'll go, this guy won't let me grow. He knows how to do it. I never get to. Or they sit back and let you do it. And then you're going, why am I paying you? I'm frustrated now as an employer because you're the rainmaker. Okay. So let's get to your question before I continue. I'll take us on a different path if I keep going. So Casey, what were you going to ask or say?
Yeah. So do you remember back in the day, a couple years ago, when Facebook was amazing with sales and ads before they got all the restrictions? Because you were able to profile your exact customer almost down to like the color of their skin and hair. I did that for employees, and I actually hired a guy, and he would pick and choose, and he would ask me all these questions. Hey, who do you want working for you? And I would literally sit down with him, and I would almost draw up the perfect truck lead, the perfect admin, whatever. And he would go get them. And what's crazy is it was just Facebook at the time. Well, I started noticing when Facebook changed their privacy thing, which I get it, but you had to start getting a little bit more creative. I have never had issues trying to find a job because I didn't put myself in that position anymore. So I had to start thinking like an employee, right? Hey, how do I go and get these jobs that I really want? What do I want as an employee? And I started noticing that the people I like to hire didn't have a resume, or they didn't know how to write a resume. And I would ask them why. And they're like, honestly, I like this job so much. I stayed there forever. I didn't really have opportunities as much as these other people. And I'm like, those aren't really opportunities, man. These people just didn't stay long anywhere. That's why they have such a big resume. And I started looking at sales tactics versus hiring tactics are almost identical. It's kind of crazy because you kind of want people that work for you. They need to know who your customer is almost enough to be your customer. Right. At least that's what I thought.
No, you're exactly right. And I'm a big fan of a couple things. I'm like you. So do you ever see that show Homestead Rescue? Did you ever watch that show where these homesteaders go out and fix people's homesteads where they're failing? And so it's the Rainey family. It's on Discovery Channel. And the senior person in the family, he says, you want my resume? And he holds up this hand. It's all full of calluses and it's all blistered and cut. And he's like, that's my resume. I'm like, absolutely it is. So I love that. And I'm a fan of, I look for experience. I use the word prepared. which is not classroom. So if someone says to me, I'm majoring in this, I wrote a paper on this, I'm like, great. I know someone in a waste hauling business, you can put that in one of their receptacles, right? So I have 4 things that I put together. I have a book coming out on leadership. So my sales book is helping salespeople create a difference, and my leadership book is coming out that help leaders create an environment that's different. And to take a look at what happened with this great resignation, and I tell people it was predictable and it was necessary, had to happen. Like in that Batman movie, the whole town needed an enema. The whole world needed an enema, and that's what happened. But here's the 4 things when you're hiring that I do, that I hire winning teams all the time. You're saying, look at it like an employee. I look at this. It's called FAST. So they have to have focus. That means they are prepared for the role I'm looking for and actively seeking that. So if you're trying to hire someone to sell your waste hauling business, you're going to look for somebody who has done something like that, and they're actively looking to do that. That there is a very important thing. That's their focus. If they took a class on it or read an article or listened to a podcast and said, I heard this Andy on this podcast, I now want to get into waste hauling, you're like, yeah, you're not prepared. Well, I listened to his whole season. You've never done it, right? Or they were a landscaper and they had their own business and now they want to get into waste hauling. Well, you'll say, I could see how that prepared you for it because you're a field guy. You had to manage the logistics. You had a lot of equipment. I might rate you at maybe a 2, not a 1. I'll give you a good, strong focus on the fact that you've had to be out in the field doing that. So you have to look at that. The second is achievement. That's A. So they've done more than most people their age, better than most people their age in a shorter period of time than most people their age. High achievement. You rate that 1 through 4, not 1 through 10. 1 through 4. You're looking for 1s. So you got focus, achievement, stability. If I'm talking to someone who's had more than 3 jobs in 5 years, I'm not talking to them anymore. And I don't really make exceptions for that. I don't want to hear the reasons why. I mean, I've left jobs. People leave jobs, but there's a pattern you'll see. And they'll have all the excuses in the world. And you know what they say about excuses, and I won't say it, but excuses are like a-holes. Everyone's got them.
Assholes. Yeah.
And then
Hold on. Have we gone this whole episode without swearing yet?
I think we did.
I would say 37 minutes would be a new company record.
But the last one is thorough. They have to be thorough. They have to have detail. And in your job, there's got to be a lot of attention to detail because you're dealing with customers, and one bad review, one bad referral, and you're out of business. So you can't do what you guys do that long and just be a bunch of dopey guys with garbage cans, and that's the thing. When you're saying that it's growing business and there's a lot of people getting in, they don't have what you have, which is a lot of years of experience dealing with people, keeping people happy.
What's interesting is, and this is what I love about this, you knew nothing other than we both bullshitted on a call last week.
Right.
We had in-depth conversation, and yet on that call, I didn't talk about what I did. I said, hey, I own a junkable company. And that was the extent of it. But what's interesting is what I see, and what I find is interesting, almost every Facebook group or someone that reaches out to us literally comes from the 2 places you came from. Hey, I watched a bunch of videos on YouTube on junk removal, or verbatim landscapers. Landscapers like, I already have the trailer. Like, right. Casey can attest for this thing. And then they have this, okay, I can do it. Or I got a couple guys that are like, oh, I'm going to do this in addition to landscaping, right? Which is like, well, hold on. Now you just missed the F, which is focused. Right. A lot of people, I get the question all the time. And I love it when listeners reach out to us. We had a guy reach out to us about a month ago. Took Casey and about 3 weeks to get back to him collectively because he asked like 15 questions. We love getting back to our listeners and answering questions because we've done it before. And what we end up getting is people that will reach out to us and they say, like, hey, like, Andy, aren't you getting into dumpsters? And I'm like, because it's not focused. My whole business model is I go to people's houses, I keep things out of the landfill, but I do it with box trucks and not dump trucks. Mm-hmm. And if all I'm going to do is go to the landfill and dump it out, okay, well, maybe a dumpster would be a good fit. It's not a good fit. I am moving my business more into waste logistics. I have contracts with WM, and I work with some of the bigger haulers to do some of the things they don't want to do because I'm able to do it. I do electronic waste and e-waste for waste management, for example, because they don't want to mess with it. So it's like, well, that's a good fit because now I'm hauling material and I'm sorting it, which fits my natural fit, which keeps me focused. So it's interesting you brought up the people that are like, oh, I watched all the YouTube videos, I think I got it. Or the landscapers. I tell people the same thing, and this is my answer when it comes to this industry. Go do 100 jobs and tell me if you liked it. That's it. Because to your point, you can go do 98 jobs and be like, oh my God, this is the simplest, easiest business I've ever been in. I'm making money hand over fist. And then you have 2 jobs, right? One where, it's a bad customer, one where you lose money and you might be done. Because 2% of the time it doesn't work out. And that's about how life works.
Yeah.
And then once people do 100 jobs, like, okay, I like it. I want to be invested. Now what? I say, okay, come back to when you got 1,000 jobs under your belt.
Right.
And track, how'd you get the customer? How much was the job? What did you do? What worked well? What didn't work well? Right? These standard numbers. And then now I have something to chew on. You do 1,000 jobs, right? And that takes a good operator. It takes a year to do your first 1,000 jobs.
Right.
4 job average per day, quarter trailer, or but half trailer average, haul 2 trailers a day. That is, for your listeners out there, if you want to know what success looks like, it's 1,000 jobs, 1 truck, 1 year, and it's extremely achievable. Because for every fucking full trailer you do, you got a single item or a 2 item or a small picker on the side of the road. And I can tell you, I did way more than 1,000 jobs in my first 12 months of business because I was focused. I had a 7-year run up of doing it on the side.
Right.
I love it. So I talk about processes. Processes have to hit 3 points: systematic, thorough, and repeatable. And those 3 words are 3 different words. So the fact that you use stability, you got to have stability, and then thoroughness. Like, you got to be thorough. The challenge is, and this is what Casey and I've seen the last 2 years, people got in, they were making money, doing the thing, then it kind of got slow. Then like, oh, I'm just going to spend a little bit more money on Facebook, a little bit more money on Google. Oh, I'm going to make my prices a little bit less. So that 30-40% margin is now 20%, maybe 10%. And now the customers have dried up, and now they're like, I'm out of money and out of ideas. Like, well, you weren't thorough. When the getting was good, and I asked you where you got your customers from, you're like, I don't know, the phone just kept ringing. Well,
that's the thing is, and that's the most important thing we found in sales was if I wanted someone out there selling junk removal, I never wanted them to tell people what we did because they already know at that point. We're there. We already have the lead. The sales part is how can we create more value for this customer to be a lifelong customer? And a lot of people didn't believe me, but when I exited my company, I looked overall. I remember the last day, I just was very curious. How many clients did I have? How many jobs total? It was insane. And I think I was a little bit over 50% return, as in 50% repeat customers. So if you think about that and you have over 5,000 customers, 6,000 customers, your jobs are 13, 14, 15,000. It's like, well, how? I thought it was a one-time thing. It's because they believed in your mission. You made it accessible. You made it very convenient for them. And like we always say, the best customers are the ones that ask you how much they owe you, not how much do you cost. It's never about money as much as it's about time, effort, and convenience, right? Can you get here quick? Can you provide value for me? And how hard is it for me to get you to do this?
Well, and all the things we're talking about are components of what makes each company different. I mean, where people will fail in your business and in every business is they look at themselves as what they do versus what they solve, right? So you two, I'm talking to you, and you're not talking about what goes into the day-to-day of trash management and waste hauling and things like that. You have a vision of where this company is going to go and succession management, who's going to take over, what does it take, what do the clients need, and everybody who's in business has to think that way. If you think I'm a waste hauler, you're going to live and die by some price, right? And you'll try to bid something off or drop off a dumpster for cheaper, or try to tell people they don't need permits or whatever, and it just becomes messy. So there's an exercise that you go through, and I walk people through it in that chart with the book, where you take a look at what you just talked about, Casey. You talk about, here are my customers, and you said you had several thousand, right? So I just tell people, make a list for me of your top 5 customers and tell me why they're your top 5. Inevitably, people will tell me, here's my top 5 customers. They spend this, they spend this, they spend this, they spend this. Or we sell these 5 services and they buy all 5, they buy 4, they buy 3. So they describe what they do and they back people into that. And I'm like, great, that's cool. That's good. It's good to know that. That's good data. We'll use that data later. We put it aside and we go through the whole day of leadership and development and things like that. And then at the end, I say, hey, I want to do something just before we wrap up. Describe to me the top 3 characteristics of people that you really like to do business with. When you walk away from them, you feel really good. What are those top 3 characteristics? And we write it down. And then I bring their list of top customers back out. And I say, now, tell me the person that works at customer number 1. What are the characteristics that they display? They don't have those. They don't have compassion. They don't have kindness. They don't have an open mind. They bid me out, but I know that they're going to do that. So I do this and I keep their business. Okay. And you go through all this and you find out that who you spend your time with isn't always who you should be spending your time with. And that comes down to strategy and deciding you're going to build things differently. Now, the caution is don't throw away that customer list. You have to pay your bills while you're building up to the idea that we talked before about when you operate with your strengths, it's really creating happiness for you. And if you could be happy all day, then you have a job you never leave. You don't even think of it as a job. And then you create that for other people around you. Same thing. You want to get to where you take a look at what you say you want and then what you're actually doing. And most people, if they made a list of everything they do all day and you said, take a yellow highlighter, highlight the things you love, they wouldn't highlight a thing because they're task oriented. They're checking things off a list, checking things off a box. It's like saying January 1st, I'm going to lose weight. Okay, that goes nowhere because January 15th, you're doing nothing about it, or you bought the equipment and you hang the clothes on it, right? So you have to take a look at where do you stand today? What do you want? Or at least what don't you want? So when I run into people who say, I want to have my own business, usually what I'm hearing is, I hate my boss. Right? I got screwed on a promotion. I didn't get a pay raise. I'm not here. And people say, it's been my lifelong passion to be a waste hauler, to have a restaurant, to have my own landscaping company. No, it hasn't. You hate your job. You hate your boss. Update your resume. But if your lifelong passion, I'm sure you didn't go to school and say, you know what? Waste hauling is my calling, man. That's it. No, you discovered that. And you may have had several passions along the way, and it happened to be that. I started in direct marketing, mailing lists. And back then, the internet was coming out, and people were, they didn't know whether to shit or wind their watch when it came to the internet. And you know what? There was nothing there, and it all failed. Later, I got into large format print. So if you're watching this, you see like that logo on the wall. One of my companies, that we make large format print like that. Now, I find more people are talking to me about people and process management, and that's what got me into consulting. So I hired someone to run that company for me. And he's doing well, and that is his passion, but his passion is really about the business process. His passion may change, but I took a look at what are the qualities you're looking for in a person that you want to go to work for? And he wanted to find someone who could mentor him and train him and knew something that he could. And I quite honestly, I was burning out a little bit with that type of stuff. He was at his fresh point. So I'm like, that's an ideal candidate that fit the fast category. And he's looking for what I can give him. And that gives me time to go do these other things. So I think that your folks should do that. Take a look at who are all my customers, what would make them ideal, and how many of them really fit that definition, my definition, right? Or your definition or yours. Your definition is 100% right. That's who you want to do business with. Could be waste management, could be mom and pop down the street, could be universities, but you have to know who you are. If you don't know who you are, you're just wandering.
I love it. And I like it because Andy and I are great examples of this. So he has a lot more experience in this industry than I do. And before I was in this industry, never thought I'd ever be in it. Like there wasn't even a hint. I wasn't connected in any way to this industry, even though he was with his dad and brother. Like he kind of grew up around the industry. But like for me, I tell people I was thrown into a position to either grow up or shut up. And I ended up growing up, becoming a business owner. And from then on, it was an addiction. Like I never, ever wanted to be dependent on someone else's employment, because that's all it is. When you work for someone else, if they get fired, everything changes for you, even if you keep your job. Now you got to change your whole thing. But I think for me, the biggest thing was deciding that the resiliency that it takes to run your own business through good times and especially through bad times, it's more common than you think. There's a lot more people out there that are resilient enough to do this. They just don't have the guidance, and they don't know how to take that first step into risk. Like, hey, oh, it's a big risk. Well, yeah, it is. But what if tomorrow COVID 2.0 happens?
Yeah.
You know, and they don't think
Yeah.
about the future as much.
I get a lot of people coming to me who, I mean, they're not only on life support, but the electricity is about to be shut off. Like, dude, you're coming to me so late. So I get a lot of people like, save my business. And I'm like, again, I'm not Harry Potter. Okay. I'm not even Hagrid. Right. So I can help you learn to fix things, and I'll be there with you. But the best folks I run into are the ones that it isn't bad, but there is more. They want more. And so they can, without the pressure of, look, we either sell or we're dead. You know, that's the extreme that I get quite often. Or you get the people who you know, I hate my boss, but I really had this passion. But if you get the people who are like, you know what, I think we're going through growing pains because, you know, it's getting stale and I could do this in my sleep. Those are perfect candidates to say, you know, what if? Do you have a what if still in you? And if you do, what does that look like? Or at least what doesn't it look like? It's people can tell me what they don't want. That's the best place for me to start. What don't you want? I don't want to work for somebody else. I don't want to have customers texting me all night long. I don't, and all these things come out. And so you say, well, the reality is people in, you know, the pool light bulb business, they're going to text you at nighttime. Why don't you automate that? So you don't, and also you don't have to respond. Like, in other words, get them feeling like you're taking care of them. And that maybe is where automation does make sense. But it's all about looking at what's in front of you and being clear, you know, and I talked about the list and having the ideal customer. And I'm real big on building the profile. Know what they look like when you run into them so that you can get with them, or when you make cold calls or whatever it is you do, you're not just calling the guy who you know you can get business from at the lowest possible price, but he gave you business and you feel good for a moment, but you wasted time away from these ideal customers. But then getting back to differentiation, you need to be willing to find out from them, what is an ideal salesperson or sales executive or leader of a company? What is an ideal company like in your mind? So you're gonna say, I'm trying to break into, you know, the waste removal at universities, and you're going to have meetings with some of the deans, some of the people who run housing, some of the athletic directors, whatever it is. You're going to have to be willing to hear what they believe is an ideal characteristic of a company and of an individual. And you're going to have to be willing to become that if that's what you want. So it's the two edges of that sword. What is an ideal customer that I spend my time with? And what is ideal in their mind? Because there's the me I think I am, the me that I really am, and the me that the world sees. And you got to meld those together if you're going to make a difference in your business. But nobody
Yeah, and Andy,
made a fortune by making photocopies. You got to be an original.
no.
You can't
Well,
be. Go ahead.
and that's the thing is no one made a fortune doing junk removal as much
Right.
as you'd like to think so. You
Right.
have to look at the bigger picture. A lot of people like to call out the big three, and I'm like, all of those founders, they didn't do junk removal very long because they
Right.
scaled. They had bigger visions. And Andy and I went to this Waste Expo thing, and I'll tell you, here's the cool thing about it. It was, I wouldn't say it was out of our league, but these were way different level, right? These are the big companies, the manufacturers. I mean, you want to know exactly how a landfill operates? They're there.
Uh-huh.
And not one time did revenue come up in a lot of conversations we had. They never mentioned revenue. It was always about operations. It was always about marketing. How can we get the edge on the next year, right? How can we get in front of what the economy is bringing? Even they're thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
So for everybody out there, even the one-stop shops, like, hey, I'm a handyman, junk removal, carpet cleaner, and mechanic. Okay, well, what's your edge look like? Because right now, there's people out there who are thinking bigger and better than you.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to get with them. See if they're thinking about something. Why are you not thinking about that same thing? Because they have a lot more to lose than you.
Yeah. Well, I was just talking to a leader and her leadership team, And I think in pictures and I think in analogies, and they were talking about these different things and looking to hire people within the industry and, blah, blah, blah. And I proposed the idea. I'm like, listen, for lack of a better term, inbreeding will make a baby, but is it really the baby you want? Right. So there is benefit to working with outside ideas. And for me to come in and like ask you guys questions where you go, Pat, that's the stupidest question. That has nothing to do with our business. No, you don't understand. The more you're explaining your industry and your business to me and you're teaching me, the more you're learning. And there'll be the one question I ask where you go, that might have some merit. Now you'll apply the secret sauce of the industry, but if all it is a bunch of you guys talking to a bunch of you guys, guess what? Those ideas are just going to circulate around, and it's like it's going down the toilet bowl. So the whole thing that keeps me in business is, and what makes me different is I tell people I am from the outside. I am your secret weapon. I have 3 daughters, and they're beautiful. And I told them I'm your secret weapon because I know what these son of a bitches are saying in the locker room. I will absolutely be your secret weapon. I'm the one who gave them the talk, but I gave it from a whole different perspective. And that's the thing is you have to be able, and my daughters respect that. And then they respect when I talk to whoever they might date or who they're married to now, because it's not like my dad will kick your ass. It's like, no, my dad knows you. He knows exactly what you're saying. And I mean, that's just the way it is. So that's for my business. I love talking to guys like you because I don't know your business. And we are going to come up with something that nobody that you compete with would come up with. If you were a betting man in the Bible days, you'd say, well, there's David, there's Goliath. I know who I'm betting on because they all look the same. But you do one thing different and you change the whole history. That's the beauty of it.
Well, first of all, I got a 9-year-old daughter, so you might have to give me some tips and tricks. So this is the military in me. So this is there was a sergeant first class Tabner, recently retired from Facebook friends. Anyways, I was my daughter wasn't born yet. We were pregnant. She was almost born, I believe. I can't remember that time. Anyways, he's like the best thing about having a son is he goes versus the daughter. He goes when you have a son, you don't have to worry about one wiener. When you have a daughter, you have to worry about all the wieners. And I'm just like,
oh man.
I know, right? I was like, that put things in fucking perspective.
Oh my God.
So I'll have to get some advice offline from you there. Yeah, I don't want to be the son of a bitch dad with a shotgun.
Well, and everybody who's about to be a dad of a daughter says that. I'll clean my shotgun. I'm like, all right, that works. That works when you're talking to your buddies over, over a campfire having a beer. But you do that to your daughter and embarrass her one time, she'll sneak. You gotta be who they talk to, and you got to find a way, and that's a differentiation right there. And Casey, you had mentioned before it's social media, and another story that came to mind. I had somebody recently that was in a session, and she's saying, I want to post better. I want to do more posts. I'm going to follow. I'm going to contribute. I'm going to post. And I'm like, why? I mean, why? Because people like to say, what's your why? And I like to ask, why is your why your why? Right? So why do you want to post? And she's like, well, I want to grow my business. I'm like, all right, how does that have to do with posting? You want to grow your business. That's different because first of all, you're getting feedback. It's data. When you get a response, that's data. So you're basing your success on a thumbs up. On somebody might have read it and went, that changed my world. It never gave you a thumbs up. So people often define what they want as what gives them a reward. I want to post more. And really what you want is you want everybody to like and share and comment. And that doesn't happen. So social media
it's a very difficult play too, because it's very dependent on other people that you have no control over.
Yeah. I had people say to me, I had sort of taken a break from posting my blogs, and it was because I was writing quite a bit for my book. And they're like, well, what happened? You went dark. Where'd you go? And I'm like, I didn't really even know you were reading that. Oh yeah, we read it all the time. I'm like, well, okay, how about a thumbs up? But I mean, everybody falls into that. You fall into that. So it's just a careful thing. Be careful what you measure because you'll get it. And so be really, really critical on what you're measuring. And then also, if you do have, you may not have employees, but you have people in your channel you work with or suppliers. You are always leading a process. You are always in charge of a group if you're running a company. And so, you have to inspect what you expect. And if you don't do that, it's chaos. Look at the Chicago Bears, for God's sake. That's a great example right there.
There we go. 1 hour. 1 hour on the head of the podcast was the first time we mentioned football, because Casey is a unfortunate Cowboys fan, because every year is going to be their year,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And as a Packers fan, every year we should be our year, right? Should all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Now this year will be, because Jordan Love, I'm going to say it right now, mark your calendars, Hall of Famer. 15 years from now, we're going to trade him probably to the Jets after a Hall of Fame career.
Dude, you're talking to a Bears fan. You know how many people we've said that about? I mean, it's so hard to be a Bears fan. It's hard to be an NFL fan anymore. I'm watching XFL from now on.
Well, you guys draft quarterbacks in the first round. And here's the issue. They go from being the best in Pee Wee, the best in junior high, the best in high school, the best in college. And they're like, hey, go now be the best in the world with guys that are 50 to 100 pounds heavier than you've ever seen before and faster. And you get the Justin Fields of the world, like, oh, yeah, remember in the preseason game, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm adapting to the game. Like, it's coming to me real fast. And the first game of the season, he was on his back.
Yeah.
Half the game, or running for his life, because
Oh my God.
that 4-second clock in his head didn't work.
No. You're going to actually like one of my podcasts. It's called How Differentiation Changed the NFL. You'll like that. It's actually the preface to my audiobook of that, but it's a great story of the 85 Bears and how they used all the tenets in my book. Well, we gotta have something.
See, I'm a big baseball fan. I love watching the baseball, but here's what got me very turned off to them. This is a while back. Their pitching, they changed their pitchers. They started training them differently. They started saying, hey, I need 10 pitchers. And, Texas, we always brag about Nolan Ryan, right? Because he's Mr. Texas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially, he broke so many records at his age. And you're like, how? Well, because back then, that was a pitcher's job. You're in the game, not just for 3 innings, and then you can go take a shower. And it really turned me off, because you're like, man, I'm starting to like this one pitcher, and all of a sudden, he gets traded. Why? Well, because he had a bad inning one time, and this one guy can go an extra half inning. It just, efficiency killed me, I guess. I'd rather see a beast out there just kill his arm for the team,
Yeah. Oh my God.
I'm about to have to do a hard stop here, guys.
See the thing. We get 1 hour in, like literally 1 hour. We're going strong, talking business, talking work, and then
talking baseball and football.
85 Bears. I dated a woman from Chicago for 2 years, and all I heard about was the 85 Bears. And the thing is, here I will give you Chicago people this: you guys, the Blackhawks being the exception, you guys have historically bad teams that you guys are overly dedicated and loyal to.
Right.
It's like your loyalty to your sports teams is like your loyalty to politicians. They are destroying your city, and yet you're like, hey, let's keep voting the same people in.
No, and if you look at the 85 Bears, that was a great team, right? And so what you would expect is take a look at that blueprint and say, let's do that. That's never happened. So it's just, fantasy football is the only way to be a football fan anymore.
Isn't that? It's what it is anyways. It's all a fantasy.
Yeah. The older I get, the less I care about sports. I now know why my dad doesn't give a shit.
Right.
Because I give a shit. My own bit, same token though.
Well, his hero went to the Jets.
It's true. The first one, my dad's been pissed off at the Packers for 15 years ever since they traded Favre.
Right.
He was, oh my God, yeah. My dad will wear a purple Vikings Favre jersey before he would wear a Packers jersey, because that was his favorite quarterback.
So I'll tell you. We talk about daughters and we're talking about sports. So we're White Sox fans in my house, and my daughter, the one who's she's married.
Everybody's neutral on the White Sox.
Yeah, she's about to have her.
She's married a Cubs fan.
Not only did she marry a Cubs fan, her dad worked for the Cubs. Her dad worked for the Cardinals, or his dad, worked for the Cardinals during the Mark McGwire days, and then the Cubs from Sammy Sosa all the way through the World Series. So she comes home from school, and they painted rocks, and she has a bunch of Cubs. I'm like, what the hell is that? And then she's got like Cubs gear. I'm like, what the hell is that? And she goes, there's this boy. I'm like, oh God. That was okay. I could get past that because he told me, he's like, look, the Cubs, that's my paycheck, but I'm a White Sox fan. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm cool with that. My youngest daughter, she comes walking up the driveway one time. She's full head to toe Green Bay gear. I'm like, what are you doing? Right? Now that would be like me or your daughter walking up with a bunch of Chicago Bears gear, right? I looked at her. I'm like, what are you wearing? And her boyfriend's wearing the same thing. Like, what are you doing? And he would come in and be like, are we winning? I'm like, no, we're losing. He's like, are the Packers. I'm like, we don't talk about the Packers here. What the fuck is that? What are you wearing? So your daughters will just change on you because of who they're dating.
It doesn't work because you're too.
Oh no! My speech had to do with other things, not with what you could wear any sports gear you want. I don't care.
Less important things. All right, let's go around the room with respect to time for Casey and our listeners. Let's go around the room. Top takeaway from today. We'll start with you, Casey.
Top takeaways is, get out and take a look way outside your business and try your best to, I know you don't like the word try, but look at your business and other people's perspectives, because everything's changing. People are changing. So your business needs to be changing with them.
Less inbred children. Is that what you're trying to say, Casey?
What? Yeah, way less of that. That's insane. When you said that, I was like, holy shit, that's a first.
That's a good line. Less inbred children. Patrick, top takeaway from today.
I think my top takeaway is more of like a reinforcement that no matter what business you're in the people business. Mm-hmm. And that's what's going to grow your business, and that's what's going to keep you in business is people. So just listening to you both talk about what you do and talking through, it's consulting for your business is no different than going into a brass and glass business and consulting them. The issues are always the same.
I wrote this down in my notes. I love alliterations. I love threes. So this is what I hit, and it makes sense. Transcend, from transactional to transformational. We talk about it all the time. And now I like this. The idea that, because I even used the word transcend when we were talking, like, no, it's transformational. And in my head, I'm like, well, how do we get from transactional to transformational? And when you do that, how do you then tell your customers that? Because that's exactly what you were talking about, Patrick, when you were saying that, hey, I'm not going to sit there and tell you I'm different. I'm not going to tell you what I do. I'm going to tell you the way that my customers feel when I leave. I'm going to tell you what they say about me, right? If I'm like, hi, my name is Andy and I'm different, no one's going to believe me. But if I say, hey, this is what my customers say about our business, now it's a whole other thing. So transcend, from transactional to transformational. I might put that in my next book. I'll tag you, be like, yep, Patrick said the things, and here's why we do it. All right. But another great episode of the Trash Talk Business Podcast. For everybody listening at home, thank you for joining us for another episode. If you'd like to be a guest, you got a story, you got questions, email us, Facebook us, link to us, hell, send me a text message. I don't give a shit. We'd like to get back to you. We'd like to hear from the field. What challenges are you guys facing? What answers you guys need? What guests we need to bring on? And we're going to continue to put out some great content so you can grow your business, grow your dream, become more professional in this junk little world that we all live in. If you have any questions, concerns, complaints, send them to Casey. He's your guy. We'll see you next week on the Trash Talk Business Podcast.